I change things, still I fear the answer's no. In this fucked up world in which I feel I stand alone. All this hate that I feel for you, my one true enemy, once was blind, but now I see. It makes me question, why do we choose to live this way? I try to free my mind from what's not meant to be. It makes me question why.
Okay, before we even start, there's something I know I have to address. I just need you to know that I know. Okay? I know it's on my head. I put it there. So you don't need to go out of your way to be like, oh my god, Darkness, look at the hat. It's not the same. You haven't worn a hat in a while, but that's not the same hat from before. That's a different hat. It's almost like people have more than one hat that they wear, or something insane like that. And maybe I just felt like wearing it. You ever think about that? Okay? Let it go! So, getting back on topic, Sonic Adventure 2! Oh my god! You think I would have reviewed this by now? Because, you know, it's a Sonic game. And that's really the only reason, because it's a Sonic game. I've seen to review like all of those. You ever notice that? Like, it seems like all my most popular reviews are Sonic reviews, and I don't know why that is. And you know I'm gonna run out of Sonic games eventually. So I don't know what I'm gonna do after that. I'm just saying, like I will eventually review every Sonic game ever. Oh my god, God help me then. I mean, it's just weird. Sonic Adventure 2 is the greatest 3D Sonic game ever made, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not even setting up a joke. I'm not, you know, trying to be sarcastic. I mean, I'm being dead serious. It is that good. Or that bad, depending on your point of view, because when you're saying it's the best 3D Sonic game ever made, and you're comparing it to most of the other 3D Sonic games, you start running into a problem in the quality department. Generations almost topped it. That was true, I did say that in my Generations review, but I don't feel that it did. Not completely anyway, for a couple of reasons. Mostly because it's just not as good. SA2 just did like everything right as far as I'm concerned, at least in terms of what it was trying to accomplish. You remember my Sonic Adventure 1 review, I had a lot of problems with sort of things like the plot holes, and the gameplay was a little confusing, and some of the characters weren't fun to play as. Well, here they remedied all that. They've condensed the gameplay down to 3 core mechanics, and everyone has original levels, which throws me off completely. Because you have any idea how many 3D Sonic games rehash levels? This is such a constant issue in almost every other 3D Sonic game. This game doesn't at all. Not once. Not one time do you get to rehash levels. There are some levels that look a little similar because they're set in the same locations, but they're not the same level. The gameplay and the controls are solid, the graphics are great for the time, and the multiplayer is actually surprisingly fun for a Sonic game. The story is actually miraculously interesting, and it's probably one of the only times that a serious plotline has been done in a Sonic game, and it's good. Which again is something that's relatively uncommon in most Sonic games. And yet, there's a group of people that seem to really hate this game for some reason. And I just need you all to know that you're wrong. And I mean that. No, I'm gonna get dislikes for that. People are gonna go in the comments like, Darkness, you're not respecting other people's opinions again. How many times have I told you I don't care? If an opinion is based on exorbitant bias or just hatred of an entire series, then it doesn't matter. And that's honestly where it comes into play for me personally, because most of the people that seem to hate SA2 aren't Sonic fans in the first place. So, why would I care what they think? I admit that there's probably a few Sonic fans that think the game is overrated, and that I'll concede on, because there's some people who hold SA2 in like the highest conceivable regard, praising it as the greatest thing under the sun, which would imply to me that it's flawless, and it ain't. So that's not gonna work. But it's still a really great game, and one of the best Sonic games ever made. The game is set up with 2 main stories as well as the 3rd and final act, condensing it from the 6th and 7th that were in SA1. I like this better because it condenses the storyline in a much neat and tidier way. whenever you go beyond, say, 2 or 3 different story arcs, things tend to get a bit confusing and hard to follow. And you're probably wondering how there's too many sides to the story when there's 6 characters to play as, and that's because the game is set up into teams of 3. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles make up the hero side, whereas Shadow, Eggman, and Rouge make up the dark side. You're probably really confused all of a sudden if you've never played this game before. Granted, if you haven't and you're watching this review, I would be surprised, because I don't really know a Sonic fan who hasn't at least tried SA2, plus you can get it on basically every medium now. Go on Xbox Live, it's there. Or on the PC, it's there too. Probably on PS3 as well. I mean, really you have no excuse not to have played it by now, is what I'm saying. Regardless, you may have noticed that I mentioned Eggman as part of one of the playable characters. That's actually kind of a big deal, at least it was back then. Eggman has never, before then or since, been a playable character in a mainstream Sonic game. In, like, racing titles and stuff like that he's been playable, but never in a main series game. This is the only time that they've ever done that, and it's a really cool idea. As for the other 2 characters I mentioned, you heard Shadow and Rouge. Well, I'm going to talk about Rouge first, because I got a lot to say about Shadow. Rouge is a bat and a spy and a treasure hunter. Really, she does everything. I don't know. She exists sort of to fill in this femme fatale role, and she's actually a pretty strong character, surprisingly. She's sort of a hit or miss situation because they gave her sex appeal, and I don't really understand that personally. But, you know, it works, and her personality is actually relatively likable for the most part, and she becomes a pretty strong supporting character throughout the following games. I also think it's nice they introduced a playable female character who isn't just a bubbly, ditzy, Sonic-following little girl. Not that I hate Amy, I'm just saying the difference is notable. Anyway, I mentioned Shadow, and Shadow, I gotta say, is one of my favorite Sonic characters ever, which is relevant because people actually hate SA2 only because of Shadow some of the time, and I've noticed this. Again, this has to do with people who aren't actually fans of the series, which frustrates me to no end. And I think, personally, if you dislike Shadow, you never gave him the chance, or even bothered to play the game, really. Because I think the problem is people look at Shadow and assume he's just evil Sonic. You know, oh, he's just black with red stripes, he's supposed to be edgy. That's all he's for. Which, if you bother to, like, play the game, read up on him, or do anything that requires effort, you'd realize that he's probably the most well-developed character in the entire series by far. The dude actually has reasons for his actions. The dude actually has motivations beyond, you know, being bad. And when he first showed up, he was actually pretty intimidating, I gotta say. His early appearance, he just shows up with a Chaos Emerald and basically tells Sonic to fuck off. Even showing the power of Chaos Control with his ability to warp and go faster than Sonic. And I don't think anyone had ever done that to Sonic prior to then or even since. The closest thing I can think of is Metal Sonic, and even then Sonic could keep up with him. But this entrance just blows the whole thing out of the water and defines what Shadow's supposed to be. And then you keep playing his arc and you realize there's way more behind all this. He's not just here to be evil or be a badass. He's here because of a promise he made to his childhood friend. He wants vengeance for her death, and yeah, that's where things get really serious because his childhood friend Maria was literally shot in front of him by a gun soldier. And I don't think any Sonic game's ever done anything like that. Like nothing that serious. I mean, mind you, Maria was like, I think 12 or 13 at the time of her death. You're literally talking about a soldier murdering a child. That's hardcore. They don't actually show it, in graphic detail, but still, the implication's fairly strong for a kid's game. And I plead with you, this is the only time where a serious plotline in a Sonic game has ever really worked. Most other Sonic plotlines usually play things up for laughs, or don't take the storyline too seriously, or if they do, the storyline sucks so hard that it fails miserably. I know I've been talking about the story, and I don't want to talk about too much yet because I want to save another discussion later. But let me talk about the graphics and sound next, because everyone needs to talk about graphics and sound. Graphics look great. I think I already said that. I mean, it's really hard to complain about them when they all look so good. I mean, it would look really great on the Dreamcast, and it looked fine on the GameCube, and since then I think they've held up fairly well. I mean, for a game that's about 15 years old. Oh my god, this game's almost 15 years old. Oh, oh my god, I need to go outside or something. I played this game when I was a kid, and when it launched, and sorry, I'm having trouble handling this. Anyway, beyond me not being able to to you know, handle the fact that I'm going to be 25 this year. The sound, it kicks ass. In fact, this is probably some of the best music you'd find in a Sonic game. Every character has their own theme, and it all fits. Much like Sonic Adventure, but I think the themes fit way better here. The themes for the characters in the previous titles, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, are actually remixed versions of their themes for Sonic Adventure. But these versions seem to fit their characters better. Sonic's, for example, was much more fast-paced than the 80s metal we got in Sonic Adventure. But I think the dark themes are what really killed me on this one. Rouge's is pretty good for who she is, but Eggman's is totally not a parody of I Am the Walrus. His version is called I Am the Eggman, and it's just the best thing ever. And of course, my favorite is Shadows, because fucking darkness and shit. Listen, I know what edgy's all about, okay? I am darkness, the curse. You cannot get edgier than that. I just love this theme though, because it sounds so distorted. It fits Shadow's character and the sort of mental strain and conflict he's under this entire time. It's perfect. The music is perfect. Going into the level themes, they're perfect. Pumpkin Hill, I gotta find my lost piece. I know that it's here. I sense it in my feet. The great emerald's power allows me to feel. I can't see a thing, but it's around somewhere. I gotta hold my... I'll stop, I'm sorry. I can't rap. Okay, I'm white. Leave me alone. Anyway, I'm sort of dancing around the gameplay issue for some reason, because I haven't got into it, but the game's really fun to play. Sonic Shadows gameplay is perfect, basically. And I really mean that wholeheartedly. You might say it's not perfect. And no, it's not perfect, but it is perfect. You shut up. Get out of here, okay? I don't think a 3D Sonic game has been done this well before or since. Modern ones like to play up the speed mechanics way too easily, but have forgotten that speed was only part of the equation. There's also the control factor and the ability to build up that speed, not just boost and get it back all of a sudden. Games like Sonic Unleashed and Generations do it that way, and that's fun on its own. I'm not gonna bash those games for it, but I really prefer the idea of being able to build up speed and earn it by playing well. The control itself is tight. You're able to turn relatively easily, and it's easy to direct your movements on the ground or in midair. Homing attack is responsive and actually targets a bit better than it did in Sonic Adventure. The only thing that could improve it at this point is an actual physical target indicator like they added in Sonic Unleashed to make it easier to use. But even without that, with practice, you're able to know exactly when it's going to go off anyway. So I don't know why people complain about it. Probably because they're really bad at the game. That's my personal opinion. If you complain about the homing attack, you just never bother to learn the mechanics of the game. This is very simple. It's not even just the game mechanics though, it's the animations themselves. Everything just feels so alive. Shadow's movements when he skates around are perfect, making everything you do so satisfying. Same thing can be said for Sonic's. Again, no other 3D Sonic game is able to top the game in this regard. Now the other two gameplay areas are a little weird, and I actually hear very jarring, polarizing things about them. This is where people start tending to complaining about the game, and I'll explain why. See, Tails and Eggman are considered rivals in this game, and they both use giant mechs. The gameplay is extremely similar to Gamma's from Sonic Adventure, where you have a targeting laser, and the idea is to pull up as many targets as possible and obliterate them with your laser cannon. It works, it's not bad, but it's repetitive, and getting a high rank is actually extremely difficult because the scores are set up to go by that multi-target issue. You can't just run through and target things one at a time. You have to get combos, otherwise you won't be able to get a high rank, which I think is a little frustrating. A funny thing about this gameplay is that Tails and Eggman actually have life bars, which is a little weird. You don't die by losing rings. You gain a life bar back by getting rings, but when you lose rings, you won't die if you have none of them. You'll die if you don't have a life bar. I mean, it's fine, but, you know, now I think about it, I think the issue they ran into is that the mechs are actually kind of big, and sometimes it's very hard to dodge attacks, so they wanted to give players multiple chances to, you know, not die. And now I think about it, I think that this gameplay would be extremely difficult if they didn't give it a life bar, so props to you, Sonic Team, for doing that. Knuckles and Rouge's gameplay is hunting style, where you're searching for pieces of the Master Emerald, which may sound familiar to you. And by familiar, I mean Knuckles did this in Sonic Adventure. The difference here is they've changed how the radar works. Before it went by a shading system where the thing would get redder as you get close, and it works the same way here, except there's no shading. It's just green, yellow, red, and that's it. Also, you can only detect one emerald at a time, whereas before you could detect multiple. And I think they did it this way because of multiplayer. They didn't want players being able to grab emeralds just by sheer luck. They wanted them to look for the same ones and actually, you know, race and get competitive. And in that regard, it actually works quite well. You know, People actually bitch about the hunting stages, or they bitch about the shooting stages. And I don't really have a big problem with either. I mean, I don't really care for the shooting stages personally. They're not my favorite parts. In fact, they're my least favorite part of the game. But I like the hunting stages. But then I gotta talk to some players who love the shooting stages and hate the hunting stages. Like I said, it's just this polarizing thing. But at the end of the day, both work pretty well and offer, something for everyone to play. It gives the gameplay some variety, which is something that I really appreciate. Speaking of variety, there are car levels. There's 2 of them where you drive. Yeah. Nobody likes these. There's a multiplayer race mode that I never played with my friends as a kid. Because nobody likes these. It's probably the worst part of the game. Nobody likes them. I like the variety, but it just wasn't very much fun. It felt like filler. The car physics don't work very well. Nobody likes these. That's what I'm trying to say. But you know what everyone loves? The fucking Chow Garden. Look at them! They're so cute! They're just crawling around with their little pudgy heads, and I love chows. And then you get to go and race them, and then there's crabs in the kindergarten, and then you get to go to Chow Hell eventually. Because that's a thing. I'm not even making that up. You can go to Chow Hell, or Heaven, depending on whether you get a good or a bad chow. And you get good bad chows by petting them repeatedly, or giving them treats and improving their stats. Chow Garden was massively improved in SA2 Battle, because they added, stat charts and different chow to get. Things that weren't in the original Dreamcast version. So if you want to do the Chow Garden, I highly encourage you to use the Battle version of the game, which, to be fair, is the version that you download on basically every medium these days anyway. Now, this review would not be complete if I did not complain about the game. But it's got a flaw, or a few. And I will say a couple things about it. Some of the later levels get really bullshit, and I mean seriously. This game actually gets surprisingly difficult. I think the worst levels by far are the final 2 shooting levels, for different reasons. Eggman's got too many goddamn bottomless pits, this level drags on for goddamn ever. It's like the longest level in the fucking game, and it's so boring, and it's obnoxious, and you get knocked into pits all the fucking time. There's too many fucking chaoses that smack you in the face repeatedly for no reason, because they're assholes. And Tails' level has these fucking explosives on the fucking walls that will suck you into space if you blow them up, because they felt like being vindictive. That whole targeting everything. Yeah, you can't do that here because you'll blow up the fucking doors. What the fuck? Else, the camera's a bit of a nightmare, and I'll be honest about that. It's been improved since in the re-releases, but it's still not great. You can kind of control it now with the right thumbstick depending on what version you're playing, but it's still a bit obnoxious, and there's plenty of times where I've gotten to stare at walls while my character does stuff that I can't see. I mean, it's not unplayable, but it still can be very annoying. What the fuck is up with Mad Space? Fuck that level. Okay? They had a great idea with the whole orbiting planets, done several years prior to Mario Galaxy doing it, but still, level's awful, because it's so big, and it's hard to keep track of things, and you can't get off the planets once you're on them without rocket boots, and fuck Mad Space! I have to talk about the last story, because I mentioned it before, and it basically has to do with averting chaos. Both sides come together on this and work together to stop the space colony Ark from slamming into Earth and destroying everything. Which confuses me for a few reasons, because there are a couple plot holes in the game. I don't understand what Eggman's plan was then, because the whole idea was that he was using the Eclipse cannon to shoot at Earth, but it's a world-destroying weapon, so what was he using, what was he going to shoot at? Because he's like, I need to save people on Earth from, colony Ark from destroying it. But you were going to shoot the Eclipse cannon at it, so weren't you trying to do that anyway? I don't understand. What? And why would you want to blow up the Earth? Where were you going to go after that? I thought you wanted to take over the Earth. Maybe you were going to use it on a lower setting that really wasn't established or explained at all. I know I said the plot was good, and it is, but that's still one thing that always bothered me. I never, like Eggman's just like, yo, no, we gotta stop the Earth from blowing up. Except you were literally just about to do that. Just not in this way. Anyway, last story. It's awesome. It's one big giant level where you get to play as everyone. But this is where Shadow's entire existence comes together and it's so fucking good. See, a lot of people don't really understand this part, but I do, because I think way more about this than anybody should ever devote their time to doing. But I did. See, what happens is Shadow originally doesn't want to help, and he just kind of, waits for the inevitable. But then Amy shows up and convinces him to help humans. And it's probably the best scene in the entire fucking game, bar none. Just because of the whole dynamic basically convincing Shadow that humanity's not all bad, and that he shouldn't eradicate them just because one killed Maria. And since Shadow had a fractured memory, this realization makes him remember Maria's actual promise, which wasn't revenge. It was saving the planet. It was protecting the people there. That's what she wanted. And then you get to go fight the Bio-Lizard, which is the prototype of the ultimate life form. See, Shadow's the ultimate life form. I didn't mention that before. He's the ultimate life form, which means a whole handful of things, mostly having to do with his control of chaos energy, as well as being effectively immortal. The Bio-Lizard is the same thing, only, the prototype. And many people joke about this, because they're like, why would the prototype of Shadow be a giant fucking lizard? It seems random, but I can explain this. I got it. I figured it out. I want you to think about what's going on here. I want you to think about what just happened. And I want you to think about who's fighting here. This is ultimate life form versus ultimate life form. Shadow versus Shadow. The true ultimate life form versus the prototype to it. This isn't just about a physical fight. This isn't just Shadow fighting the Bio-Lizard. This is Shadow fighting himself. This is Shadow fighting the monster inside himself that tried to eradicate the planet. Because keep in mind, the Bio-Lizard's fully behind this entire plan to destroy the Earth. Because Dr. Gerald went insane and set this whole thing up as revenge for Maria's death. And the Bio-Lizard is programmed to do this exact thing. The same thing Shadow was originally trying to do. The entire fight is metaphorical of Shadow's inner struggle, of his ability to turn to the side of good and fight for the people on Earth, not against them, fighting himself. It's actually beautiful when you think about it that way. And of course the final climax of the game blows everything out of the water. Coming close to rivaling Doomsday Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic and Shadow team up, go super, and fight the Bio-Lizard in space. And it's something most Sonic games since then have tried to copy with their final bosses, but I don't think any of them come close, not even remotely so. They try really hard to do it, but it just doesn't work. It's not the same. Nothing fits as well as it does here. Nothing flowed as well as it did here. It just works so much better in SA2. And as much as I'd like other games to have done just as well, they don't. They don't come close to what this was. They don't come close to being how good this game was in every regard, whether it be the original levels, the solid gameplay, the interesting story, the developed characters, the graphics, the sound, everything about SA2 was actually done well. You know why? Because they actually put effort into making this a good game. Their entire plan initially was their hope that Sonic Adventure 2 would do for the Dreamcast what Sonic 2 did for the Sega Genesis. Because mind you, Sonic 2 took Sonic 1 and perfected it, and they wanted to do the same thing with Sonic Adventure 2. And honestly, I'd say that they succeeded pretty well, except in regards to saving the Dreamcast. SA2 stood as the Dreamcast's swan song. It was the last Sonic game released for it, and the console would be discontinued very soon after. Which is depressing to think about, but looking back, I gotta say guys, I'd almost rather this had been the final Sonic game ever made. I know a lot of you probably will disagree with that notion, because it's not like good Sonic games haven't been released since then. They have. But SA2 ended so well. It was such a high note to end on, and true, the ending was sad, but it was meaningful. It felt like something had been accomplished. You'd lost something, but you'd still saved the planet. You'd saved the entire world from destruction. Shadow was gone, but his legacy would live on in that regard. And had Sonic disappeared with the Dreamcast, maybe things would have been better. We would have been spared so much pain. We wouldn't have to suffer 06 and God help you, boom. The series might actually be looked on as pretty good still, and Sonic wouldn't be the laughingstock he seems to be nowadays. Don't you think that maybe it was better had they just let go back then? I don't know. I just felt like playing this, that I'd wished they could have ended it there. They didn't end it there, though. Oh, but I wish they had. Until next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.